Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining me tonight. As the chairman of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee, I am working hard right now to pass the most consequential piece of legislation for working families that we have seen in this country in the last 50 years. This is legislation that will significantly improve the lives of working people, our children, the elderly, the sick, and the poor. It will also make a massive investment in combating climate change by moving our energy systems away from fossil fuel and into energy efficiency and sustainable energy. It will allow us to lead the world in dealing with the existential threat of climate change. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, this bill will also create many millions of good-paying jobs as we address the long-neglected needs of the American working class, and simultaneously, it will finally demand that the wealthiest people in our country and the largest corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. Not surprisingly, this legislation has generated the fierce opposition of the corporate elite and the most powerful special interest in this country. And they are fighting back fiercely to protect their interests and are spending many hundreds of millions of dollars to do that through their lobbying, through their campaign contributions, and their advertising. They are shocked. They are just shocked that the government of the United States is actually trying to do something for working families and not just the wealthy and the powerful. Now, the healthcare industry, which, as all of you know, charges us by far the highest prices in the world for our healthcare, is doing everything they can to stop the expansion of Medicare to cover dental needs, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. The fossil fuel industry is willing to sacrifice the future of our planet in order to protect their short-term profits and to continue our dependence on fossil fuel. And of course, the wealthiest people in this country love a tax system. They just love it, in which in some years, billionaires and large corporations pay nothing, not a dime, in federal income taxes, and which allows working people to have an effective tax rate that is higher than some of the wealthiest people in this country. That's the kind of tax system that they love. That's the system they want to maintain. How could it be any better when billionaires don't pay anything in taxes? And when we talk about this overall legislation, Build Back Better, let us be very clear. Poll after poll after poll shows enormous support on the part of the American people for raising taxes on the very rich, for expanding Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and eyeglasses, and to combat climate change and reduce carbon emissions. In other words, the essential elements of this legislation is enormously popular and is supported by working families all across this country, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. There are many excellent provisions in this bill which deserve serious discussion. But tonight, I want to say a few words to you about one of the most popular and important provisions in this legislation. And that is the need to substantially lower prescription drug prices in America by finally taking on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry and demanding that Medicare negotiate lower prices with this enormously powerful special interest. Frankly, it is simply not acceptable that uniquely in the entire world, The pharmaceutical industry here in America can raise prices to any level that they want, any time that they want. Let's be very clear. The overriding motivation of the pharmaceutical industry is greed. That's what it is. Their overriding goal is to make as much money as they can by squeezing as much as they possibly can out of the sick, out of the elderly, and out of the desperate. That's what they're doing. Look, it is no great secret that we in the United States of America pay, by far, not even close, the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Unbelievably, in some cases, we pay 10 times as much for prescription drugs in this country as do the people in countries like Canada, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Australia, and other countries around the world. Now, some of you may know, on two occasions, once a number of years ago and once just 2 years ago, I have taken Americans over the border into Canada to purchase prescription drugs. In one case, I did that from Vermont, and I was with a bus load of working class women who were struggling with breast cancer. And we went to Montreal, Canada, in order to buy the breast cancer drug tamoxifen. In the other case, I left from Detroit, Michigan to go to Windsor, Ontario in Canada in order for the people who were with me to purchase insulin that they need because they are diabetic. In both cases, one for tamoxifen, one for insulin, the people who were with me were able to purchase these desperately needed prescription drugs for 1/10 of the price that they were paying in the United States. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the absurdity of the same product made by the same company sold in Canada for 1/10 of the price that it is sold in the United States? And I will tell you honestly that I will never forget the tears in both trips that we made. The tears of people who were with me, who are fighting life-threatening illnesses, one diabetes, the other breast cancer, and they were able to go to Canada and get the medicine that they need for a tiny fraction, 1/10 of the price that they're paying in the United States of America. Let me tell you what a dysfunctional healthcare system is about. In our country today, nearly 1 out of every 4 Americans cannot afford the medications that their doctors prescribe. Let me repeat that. 1 out of every 4 Americans cannot afford the medications that their doctors prescribe. Now, how insane is that? Why do you go to the doctor? You go to the doctor because you're sick. And the doctor diagnoses your illness, and in many cases will say, all right, look, this is the medicine that you need. And yet 1 out of 4 Americans cannot afford to purchase the medicine that their doctors prescribe. And what that means is that millions of people every year get sicker than they should because they cannot afford the medicine their doctors prescribe. Some will end up in the emergency room at great cost to our healthcare system, while others will actually lose their lives. All because of the unaffordability of prescription drugs in our country. This should not be happening in the United States of America, the wealthiest country on earth. According to a study last year by epidemiologists at Yale University, some 68,000 Americans die each and every year because they cannot afford to get the health care that they need when they need it. How shocking is that? 68,000 people die because they can't get to a doctor or a nurse when they should. While we do not know the exact number, there's no question, but that many thousands of these people die because they're unable to afford the prescription drugs that they need. In other words, the greed of the pharmaceutical industry is literally killing our fellow Americans. And all over this country, the American people are asking a very simple question. How many people need to die? How many people need to get unnecessarily sicker? How many people need to suffer before the United States Congress is prepared to finally take on the greed of the prescription drug industry? Enough is enough. We have been talking about this issue decade after decade after decade. And the reality is that a life-saving prescription drug does not mean anything if you cannot afford to buy that drug. And that is now the case for millions of people in our country. And let me be very clear. While millions of Americans cannot afford the outrageous price of prescription drugs, pharmaceutical companies, year after year, make obscene profits and pay their executives exorbitant compensation packages. Last year alone, the 6 largest drug companies in our country made nearly $50 billion in profit. Let me repeat that again. 6 largest drug companies made nearly $50 billion in profits, while the 10 highest CEOs earned in the pharmaceutical industry over $500 million in total compensation. And just let me give you a few examples of the greed within the pharmaceutical industry. In 2020, the CEO of Regeneron Pharmaceuticals made over $135 million in total compensation, while another executive at the company raked in more than $134 million. That's over $250 million for 2 executives in one company in compensation. Just a few years ago, the former CEO of Gilead, a major drug company, became a billionaire by charging $1,000 for the hepatitis C drug Sovaldi that was developed by the Veterans Administration, cost just $1 to manufacture, and by the way, can be purchased in India for just $4. United States, $1,000. In India, $4. In 2016, the chairman of Mylan received a $164 million compensation package after his company jacked up the price of an EpiPen by 550% over a 9-year period. What else does the pharmaceutical industry do with the record-breaking profits that they make year after year after year? Well, over the past 20 years, they have spent over $4.5 billion on lobbying. Got that? Over the last 20 years, they have spent over $4.5 billion on lobbying and hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign contributions. Today, right now, in Washington, D.C., as we debate whether or not Medicare should negotiate prescription drug prices, the pharmaceutical industry is employing nearly 1,500 lobbyists in D.C. alone. You got that? Nearly 1,500 lobbyists in Washington, including the former congressional leaders of both political parties. That is almost 3 pharmaceutical industry lobbyists for every member of Congress. That is what unlimited wealth is about. That is what unlimited power is about. They will spend as much as they need to, many hundreds of millions of dollars, just to make sure that you pay by far the highest prices in the world for the medicine that you need. And what do they get for that huge investment in lobbying, in advertising, in campaign contributions? Well, this is what they want, and this is what they have gotten. They get the ability to raise the price of prescription drugs at any time they want, at any amount they want, for any reason that they want. In other words, what that means is that the price that you are paying for your life-saving and much-needed medication yesterday, the price you paid yesterday, could literally double or triple overnight for no other reason than the pharmaceutical industry can get it. It's all greed. It has nothing to do with market economics. It just has to do that they can raise the price to any level they want because there is no law to stop them. And that is why they spend billions of dollars on lobbying, on advertising. You can't turn on TV without seeing their ads, on campaign contributions. In other words, the prescription drug industry, through their wealth and their power and their ability to bribe members of Congress with massive campaign contributions, can get away with ripping off the American people by charging whatever outrageous price that they possibly can. And today, as we speak, the prescription drug industry is at it again. They are spending many millions of dollars on campaign contributions, on TV ads, and on lobbying in order to defeat the Build Back Better Act that will finally lower the cost of prescription drugs by giving Medicare the ability to negotiate with the pharmaceutical industry, something, by the way, that the Veterans Administration has been doing for nearly 30 years. This is not a radical idea. The VA has been doing this for 30 years. And the result of that is that the Veterans Administration pays half, on average, half of what they pay in Medicare. According to a Gallup poll that was done in June of this year, 81% of the American people support this policy because they understand that Medicare should not be paying twice as much for the same prescription drugs as the Veterans Administration. And if the VA can negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies to substantially reduce the price of prescription drugs, if every major country on earth can negotiate to lower drug prices, you know what? We must empower Medicare to do that as well. There is no rational reason other than greed for the pharmaceutical industry to charge the American people $98.70 for a standard unit of insulin that can be purchased in the United Kingdom for just $7.52. You got that? $98.70 for insulin in America, $7.52 for the same product in the UK. There is no rational reason, other than greed, for the pharmaceutical industry to charge the American people $242 for the asthma inhaler, Flovent Discus, that can be purchased for just $27 in Canada. There is no rational reason, other than greed, for the pharmaceutical industry to charge the American people $686 for 2 EpiPens that can be purchased in Australia for just $169. And let's be clear, these are the same medications manufactured by the same companies in the same factories that are all available in Canada, throughout Europe, in Australia, and in Japan for a fraction of the price that we are forced to pay. For too long, much too long, the business model of the pharmaceutical industry has been fraud. For far too long, it has been Congress that has been it has not been Congress that has been regulating the pharmaceutical industry. It has been the other way around. It has been the pharmaceutical industry that has been regulating Congress. Well, those days must come to an end, and they will come to an end if members of Congress finally have the courage to stand up to the prescription drug companies. Now, I understand that the pharmaceutical industry owns the Republican Party. I got that. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. And I understand that there will not be one Republican, unbelievably, not one Republican in the entire Senate or the House who has the courage to stand up for his or her constituents and lower the cost of prescription drugs. That's pathetic, but it's true. Well, in my view, there should not be any Democrat who is in that position. There should be no Democrats, zero, who are not prepared to stand up to the pharmaceutical industry. When we require Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices, we can save well over $500 billion. And one of the things that we will use that savings for is to expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing aids. This is the United States of America. Elderly people should not walk around without having any teeth in their mouths, with having teeth rotting in their mouths, without being able to digest properly the food that they eat. All Americans, including the elderly, should be able to afford to get the dental care that they need. Grandparents should be able to communicate with their grandchildren, even if their hearing is poor, because they should be able to purchase a hearing aid. Older people should have the eyeglasses that they need so they could read their daily newspaper and see their friends and family clearly. The need to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing aids, and eyeglasses is absolutely critical. Nobody in the year 2021 denies that oral health, hearing, and vision are essential parts of healthcare. Not surprisingly, out of all of the provisions in President Biden's Build Back Better Act, expanding Medicare to provide dental, vision, and hearing aids is one of the most popular provisions. According to a June 30th Morning Consult poll, adding dental, vision, and hearing benefits to Medicare is supported by 84% of the American people. And that's all across the board. It's 89% of Democrats, 79% of Republicans, significant majority of independents. This is what the American people want, and this is what Congress must deliver for them. So yes, we are going to pass a major reconciliation bill, Build Back Better. Yes, we are going to substantially reduce the outrageous cost of prescription drugs in our country. Yes, we are going to require Medicare to negotiate with the pharmaceutical industry. Yes, we are going to expand Medicare to cover eyeglasses, hearing aids, and dental care, something that should have been done decades ago. So here we are in a very critical moment in American history. And the issue that we face is whether the government of the United States of America finally has the courage to stand up to powerful special interests and do what the American people want. And I certainly hope that will be the case. Thank you all very much.